morning, good evening, good lunchtime, whatever it is, wherever you are. Welcome to sunny Scotland and another episode of Behind the Scenes for Talk IT. As per previous sessions this week, this covers two purposes. One is to address the 7-day challenge set by Pat Flynn and Ecamm. So we are part of that today. So there are sort of talking about Ecamm to some degree, but also for guests and attendees, potentially of the new Talk IT show, I wanted to take you through the look and feel of the show and to talk a little bit today again about cameras. And to do that, I have today actually got a guest with me. So let's bring on my guest. Must add some music to this scene or a sound effect or something. But hey, here comes the smoke. And Neil emerges from behind the smoke. So just to introduce Neil to you, Neil is my streaming partner, and often we do live streams together, and frequently Neil is also in the background when I'm doing some live streams as well, pressing lots of buttons. He is a bit of a camera addict and also a bit of an audiophile as well. Much more than me, who just set things up and leaves them as they are, generally speaking. So say hello to everybody, Neil, and tell them where you're calling in from.
Yes, hello everybody. Well, I'm calling today in from sunny Portugal, and it is a little bit sunny. You know, we're waiting for the weather to break, but it's a nice day today. So all the way from Portugal, using the power of Ecamm and Zoom. So
that's us together in one room. Not in one room, just virtually. So the wonders of Ecamm and Starlink getting us all together in one location and looking like we're in the same room, which hopefully will be the same for all the guests when they come on too. But what we were going to talk about today is different cameras. So I'm going to switch to another scene where we've got a lot of me, but it tells you what cameras we have going on in what locations. So in the big box in the center here, I have got my Sony ZV-E10 camera with a Viltrox 1.4 23mm lens on it, and that's what I am looking at directly in front of me. But I've also got the Meet SE camera, which is the size of a matchbox, and that's sitting directly in front of me as well. Neil is also on a Meet SE camera. Now, just for perspective, the camera body and lens is certainly well north of £700 for the ZV-E10 and the lens. The Meet SE is more like £70, so it is 10 times cheaper than what I am usually using for my streams. So today we wanted to have a little bit of a play about with the Meet SE, and that's going to be down to Neil doing his bit. So let's just blow Neil up for a minute so you can now do a direct comparison between me here and up there. And I think possibly the only major difference you're going to see is there's a bit of a bokeh blur going on behind me with the ZV-E10, and it's the lens that's doing that for me, and it's focusing very much on me and blurring the background slightly. It's also a kind of a nicer, slightly warm, soft look and feel. I've done my best in the Meet SE below to get something similar going on by tweaking some of the settings in Ecamm, but you can see that the background isn't blurred, and I'm not quite as nicer colour going on with that particular camera. However, Neil has got a couple of tricks. I don't know if you want to talk about them first and then let me know when you want to move to the larger screen, or whether you want to jump straight to it and explain in more technical terms what the differences are between the cameras.
Well, thanks, Martin. Yeah, I will just keep on this screen for a second. So as Martin mentioned, I'm using the Meet SE2 as well. And the main differences between Martin's camera, the Sony ZV-E10, is the fact that the lens is compressing the background. So that's why you're getting that nice shallow depth of field, as it's called, making Martin really centered and focused. And then the rest of the background is slightly out of focus, giving you that separation from the background, making him pop basically and look better on camera than you would do on a flatter image. Now, the smaller webcams is that we're using, because these are webcams effectively, they're just connected via USB-C. The quality of them is really, really good, but because they are a fixed aperture lens and they're basically not the same as a full frame camera or the one that Martin's using, which is something called an APS-C, it means that you're not going to get that sort of same bokeh effect or that shallow depth of field that you would typically get with a very expensive camera. But there are a few tricks and things that you can do. OBSBOT and Insta360 and all these other camera manufacturers do come with their software now that will sort of do some fake blur. You may have seen this in Zoom as well, where lots of people just change the background and then sort of the head disappears. It's not the best look, I have to say. And it uses AI to try and separate you from the background. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. What I found is what I'm using right now is something called Camo Studio, which is a great little application that gives you sort of full control over your camera. So I can show you, if Martin goes to full screen, some of the little things that I'm using in Camo, which will help really just sort of change the look and feel slightly. And you might not see a huge difference on my side because it's quite dark behind me, but I'll do my best to illustrate. I might sort of wind some of these sliders up anyway. So Camo Studio is by a company called Reincubate. They do applications for the iPhone, so make your iPhone camera look really good and give you full control over that. They also do a Mac and Windows application, which is the one I'm using now, and I'll go to share screen in a second, which means that you can effectively change the look and feel of any camera that you can connect to it. It can be a webcam, it can be an older DSLR, it can be an iPhone, an Android, anything that you want. And it really gives you sort of that manual control with other settings that you can really sort of dial in, change the color, change the look and feel, and really get the camera looking as good as possible. And we've always recommended it, Martin and I, to other people. We've had a couple of customers that have used it in the past and they've really sort of leveled up their look and feel of their older cameras just by using this free software and making a few sort of changes and tweaks to it and really getting that dialed in look. So if I go to my presenter view, and hopefully it'll flip. This is Camo Studio, what I'm using. So I'm connected my Meet camera to this, and you can see in the live preview here, basically me and the camera itself. And then on the left-hand side, you've got all these wonderful different sort of controls, and the application will zoom in as I'm going over it. But some of the main things that you can do is, if I go down to the bottom to start with, you've got all the adjustments for the color, the exposure, and all those other things. So you can change the settings like the shutter speed. We've talked about that in the past. The shutter speed is sort of how fast the shutter is opening and closing. The slower the shutter speed, the more motion blur and the more sort of softer the image looks. You can also change the ISO value, which is the sensitivity to the available light on your camera. And in this particular case, it's the gain control. So if I just change that gain control, I can start to brighten up my image. So if I've got a really dark room like this, and that's the only available light that I have, you can actually manipulate the camera a little bit and change the brightness to get it looking a little bit brighter. Now, I don't want to go too far because the more you increase this gain, it's like a volume control, the more noise you're going to introduce into the image, and you're going to start getting some grain and effects like that. But you've also got brightness control and white balance. White balance basically changes the sort of color or the balance of the camera. You can go full orange if you want, tango style, or you can wind it down and be very cool. And again, this helps you just dial in the settings to match potentially the guest or the other person that's on the call with you, so you can have a similar look and feel. The white balance can be set to automatic as well, which means that the camera is going to read the available light and change things, but I always set it to manual. Brightness, again, is similar to the ISO control, where you can really sort of brighten up the image, but I would tend to leave it sort of quite low in here. The hue is the sort of the tint, so you can sort of be more pink or be more green, depending on the flesh tone and depending on what light you've got. Your camera may not be reading the light correctly, so you may be getting sort of incorrect skin tones. So you can use that slider to dial things in. And then you've got things like color, saturation, you know, how sort of saturated the image is, the vibrance, contrast, which is the difference between the darkness and the shadow. So you can really sort of make it more of a sort of a darker look and things like that. And then gamma is a similar one as well, where we can tweak the gamma control, and you can again look at the differences between the light and the dark areas within the image itself. And then the overall sharpness. Lots of cameras, particularly webcams, tend to be quite over sharpened. So if you turn on the sharpness control in here, you can really start to sort of wind that up to make it much more sharp and grainy, or I tend to sort of turn this down a little bit. I like the image to be a little bit softer. Digital sharpening doesn't look good. It's not very flattering. The main thing I wanted to show you though is these things up here called a background. Now you've got these different settings. So you can change the background and be more, in this case, a spotlight. So what you're doing with spotlight is you're actually just lighting the face. It's putting a spotlight effectively on your face. So that'll help you separate you a little bit from the background. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. The retouch is applying some skin smoothing to that. You've seen that in Zoom where you've got these beauty filters and things like that. Zoom has that built in. You can tweak and change that on Zoom. You've also got that on the OBSBOT cameras in the software. But the thing that I really like about Camo is this thing called Spotlight or Portrait Mode. And what that allows me to do is to change the background blur similar to what Martin's got. So if I go all the way over to the right, you can see that you're getting that sort of zoom look that we all know and love, where you enable zoom background blur and you get this horrible sort of look where you're getting all this fringing around the hairline and the shoulders. What you can do with Camo is you can really dial this in. So I'm winding this down now to a more manageable level. And I think, I mean, there's a little bit of fringing around my hair, but I'm just going to leave it at that for a second. You can see now that I've quite blurred out my background and it still looks reasonable. If I tweak this down a little bit more, I'm reducing the fringing around my hairline and my shoulders. And now it's looking a little bit more as if it's a prominent image where I'm sort of more focused and the background is a little bit more out of focus. Now, I don't know how that looks to you, Martin, but I mean, to me, it doesn't look awful considering this is artificial background blur in the background. And you can sort of tweak and change that as much as you want. But I just tend to sort of wind that down a little bit. So there's a little bit of blur in the background and so on.
Let's flip back for a second. And if we now look at my OBSBOT here, you will see that I've not got any background blur in there at all, whereas I have on the ZV-10, and now Neil has got background blur on his Meet SE. So if you look at my image on the Meet SE and Neil's on the Meet SE, his is looking considerably better. He's standing out more. I can't see any fringing going on, and with your spectacular hair, we would be seeing that in Zoom in particular. You would be going bald and then have a big Mohican, and then your chair would disappear off your shoulder and stuff like that. So anybody who does come on to the Talk IT show will not be permitted to use the Zoom version of adding in your background blur. We will be getting you in beforehand and playing about potentially with Camo if that is what is needed, and that will work with pretty much, I don't think there's any restriction on the cameras it will work with. It'll pretty much anything, isn't it?
No, as long as your computer recognizes the camera, excuse me, either as a webcam and so on, it's fine. And as I mentioned, Camo has an application that will sit on your phone. So whether you've got an Android phone or an iPhone, doesn't really matter. And it connects automatically via Wi-Fi, and then you can use your actual phone as a webcam and apply all these wonderful effects to it as well. And it's a great app. And the thing is, it's free as well. So you can pay for it to do live streaming and other things. But the basic functionality that I'm showing you today is all free. I haven't paid for this app and it works perfectly well. And it's also a virtual camera as well. We should mention that once you've set this up, you can actually have this as a virtual camera, meaning that you can use the output of how you've configured this camera in Camo into something like Zoom, Teams, WebEx, whatever you want. It becomes your virtual camera into those software applications.
And it will pick up the settings that you've previously got, so you can effectively have a program button for your settings. Maybe if you're moving locations or something, you might have a couple of different presets that you want to load in. I'm assuming Camo does have the ability to move between a couple of different presets. Is that correct?
Yeah, you've got actually, if I can go just full screen just real quick, I'll just show you.
Sure.
So there's a ton of presets with Camo. On the right-hand side, down here, you've got all these various presets and templates. You can actually sort of change the entire look and feel of your view. So if you've got company branding, for example, you can, flip and change and move all these things around. I just keep it on the blank setting for now, or you've got one with a watermark. I mean, there's lots of different ones, and you can download these templates directly from Camo's website. They're all free. But again, you can sort of change the base template that you're working with, and then you can save that as one for the one that you use, particularly for your Zoom calls and things like that. So you can switch and change between them. It's pretty configurable, yes.
Cool. So people, about 15 minutes is what we've been doing each day this week. Earlier on I did talk about cameras, but today obviously we've shown you that you can choose between a £700 camera option or a £70 camera option. The other one that I was talking about earlier in the week was also microphones as well. So what I'm going to do while I think about it here is that I've got on my little Holy Land Lark microphone here. I'm not using it right at this second, but I will be in a moment. So I'm going to choose my wireless phone, and I'm now on the wireless microphone. Turn the volume down just a little bit. So this microphone here, which you can just about see, instead of my £400 odd Shure SM7B plus XLR cable plus cloud lifter plus Focusrite box, this just plumps straight in, and it's about £100 ish rather than 400. So for £100 ish and £70 for your camera, you can get yourself looking super good, totally different on a budget. And along with your camera, don't forget this folks, is get yourself a selfie stick or a monopod or something and ensure that your camera is at eye level. So when you're bringing that camera in, make sure it's at eye level. But for today, thanks very much for joining us, Neil. Maybe we'll come back again at some point in the future and do some more, but I've got another couple of these to do on Saturday and Sunday to make it 7 days in a row. So hopefully you've enjoyed that today, and we've gone live on LinkedIn and indeed on YouTube. That's what I'm going to go check in 5 minutes. Cheerio from Edinburgh.
Bye from Portugal.